Next up, I've got the 76ers. Now, this is a team that has kind of experienced playoff lows in the past, led by the James Harden and Joel Embiid duo. Harden's out of town now. Joel Embiid's still here. But last year, he really was pretty solid in the playoffs. It was just a matter of the fact that he got injured. And I think last year, Embiid kind of took a step in a positive direction. Now, the year before, he had won MVP, and a lot of people said, oh, that's a fraudulent MVP. But this past year, he was on pace to get a real deserved MVP. And it only didn't happen because he got injured. But he was averaging about 36 points a game. Embiid, if he's anything, he's a lethal scorer. He's a bucket no matter how you want to put it. Whether he's a free throw merchant, whatever he is, those points are getting on the board. And in the playoffs last year, he was really solid too. I believe he was averaging 30. And he just happened to be injured and couldn't always play. And so that's what really was a detriment. But he wasn't a playoff dropper. And I think Embiid showed us last year that he's really got what it takes, and he turned a corner. So I trust Joel Embiid more than I ever have when it comes to a playoff setting, and I don't think that's going to be to the detriment of the Philadelphia 76ers this year. Another guy they brought in, he calls himself Playoff P, but he has had some struggles in the playoffs in the past couple of years. That's Paul George. I think a lot of the reason Paul George hasn't had the best playoff runs as of late is because, much like I mentioned with Mikal Bridges, how he shouldn't be Brooklyn's number one scoring option, I think Paul George was asked at this point in his career to do a little bit too much for the Clippers because not only was he definitively the number 2 guy behind Kawhi Leonard, oftentimes, Kawhi would deal with injuries, so Paul George became the number 1 guy. And I think at this point in his career, PG-13 is not cut out to be the clear-cut number 1 guy on a championship team. And that's perfectly fine. Guys age. And as they get older, their physical abilities might start to regress a little bit. And that's okay. That's what happens. That's the nature of the game. So I think Paul George being able to be behind Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, he can kind of lock in on that defensive end again. And I think he's going to be really good in Philadelphia in his new role. I think Paul George absolutely has what it takes to be a very impactful winning player in the modern NBA. And that just requires him taking a little bit of a step back. Now, last part of this big three here, Tyrese Maxey. He had an amazing year last year, and maybe his production's going to go down a little bit this year because Joel Embiid's going to be healthy for some point, right? He's not going to be out for most of the season, hopefully, knock on wood. And Paul George coming in, he's going to demand the ball a little bit. So Maxey's production might go down, but I think his impact's going to go up. I think he was pretty efficient last year. I think he can be even more efficient if he's taking a few less shots and kind of developing into more of a playmaker, the pure point guard for this team. I think Tyrese Maxey is going to do wonders this year in his development as not just being a scoring guard, but distributing a little bit more with the addition of a guy like Paul George. That's going to be really good because, Harden's been gone now, so Tyrese got more playmaking responsibilities then. And especially with a guy like Paul George, George is going to win the ball. Guess who's going to get that to him? Tyrese Maxey. So I think this year is going to be huge for his development, and it'll be good for him long-term and for the current Sixers team. So I think Philadelphia is a very strong contender out in the East. If you enjoyed this video, it would be great if you could find it in you to like, subscribe, maybe check out the full podcast on Spotify, follow us on there, follow us on Instagram. I know realistically this podcast isn't going to go anywhere ultimately, whether it's via the segments on YouTube or the entire podcast itself. But I want to get into the sports broadcasting business. I want to be able to promote thought-provoking discussions about the NBA, and I would love to do it via State of the Association. Thank you if you made it all the way through.